Welcome everyone to this Click Create Artist Spotlight.
Today we have Nathan A. Bauman.
What words describe your artistic style?
When I think of my own work, I think of documentation, nostalgia, not in the sense of an aesthetic nostalgia, but the feeling of nostalgia. A lot of my work is very focused on Americana and these kind of fading towns and cities across rural America that have kind of seen better days over the last 4 or 5 decades. And for me, when I think of America, I think of where I grew up, which is in Ohio, and growing up and seeing all of the things I photograph on a daily basis. And then realizing that exists across America in general is really nostalgic for me. When I photograph these scenes, I generally do so because of where I grew up and what I saw when I was at home in Ohio. And yeah, I would say nostalgia to a sense, but really when I think of it, it's just pure documentation of the world around me and what I've come to kind of realize about the United States.
What inspires you to create?
My inspiration for my early work really came from what was around me and what was happening and what I was connecting to in that given moment. But as the years have gone by over the last decade or so, I've kind of been really inspired by what was in the past and how that is changing and what will be in the future. A lot of my work is very reflective of the last 5 or 6 decades, but it's also really telling of what is to come. And I think that my inspiration really kind of lies within those cracks, finding stories and narratives that blend the last 50 years into this idea of what we're going to kind of be living in the next 20 to 30 years. So yeah, inspiration comes from a lot of places, but it's really the places I've been, the people I meet, and really how I kind of move through this universe. So it's interesting.
What are your goals as a digital artist?
Really, my goal kind of lies within just cementing my work into this permanent state that is essentially where we're going to be moving. Over the last 20 or 30 years, really, we've moved into a digital world, and I personally don't foresee that changing very much over the next lifetime. So for me, as a digital artist, when I have that transition from bringing a 35 millimeter negative and scanning that digitally and then bringing it onto the blockchain, I think it really kind of bridges the gap between decades of and generations of technology and knowledge. So for me, it started off as just wanting to have my work on the blockchain because of provenance and because of authenticity and all that good stuff that we really enjoy about it, the ability to prove ownership and all of that good stuff. But really, it's become this very interesting idea of transitioning from an analog process and then bringing that to the digital world.
What were your goals for this Click Create edition?
I had a few different ideas when Grant initially reached out. The theme being neighborhood is one that I can relate to as a child and as a teenager. But over the last 15 or so years, 12 years, I don't have much relation to the stereotypical idea of a neighborhood. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to photograph, I initially wanted to go back to Ohio to photograph the neighborhood that I grew up in. I have some really lovely memories from my childhood, and it would have been a fairly nice idea to recreate some of these memories and kind of explore that via photograph. I was thinking more about how I could interpret the word neighborhood to kind of fit my lifestyle and my current work as a photographer. As someone who travels extremely often and who's on the road a lot, my neighborhood is often the places that I stop along my road trips or along these long distance adventures. And I got to thinking, how can I make this kind of not only fit the neighborhood theme and idea and kind of reinterpret the definition, but how can I incorporate that into my current work and my current themes that I'm exploring with what I'm photographing outside of Click Create. And so I came to the conclusion and made a photograph of the Monterey Hotel on Central Avenue in downtown Albuquerque, and yeah, very stoked.